من سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا عليه في كل وقت وحين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali he quotes Imam Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qarawani, who was one of the greatest imams of the Maliki school, as saying that there are four hadith that make up the essence or the main concepts of good manners and behaviors within Islam. He says these four hadith are very simple. We should all know them and implement them to the best of our ability. I'm only going to be talking about one of them today, but I want to give all four of them just so we have an idea of what they are. So the first one is on Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu qala qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam min husni al-Islam, so the perfection of one's Islam al-mari tarkuhu is to leave ma la ya'nihi, to leave that which does not concern him. It's recorded by Tirmidhi, and Abu Isa Tirmidhi, he says that it is Hasan Sahih. The next hadith is on Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليأكل خيرا أو ليصمت. So the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or be silent. Let him speak what is good or be silent. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رجل قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوصيني. Abu Hurairah said that a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, advise me personally. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't become angry. And the one that will be the topic of this khutbah, inshallah ta'ala, the one that I was taught that if we all just implemented this one hadith, if every Muslim living in the world today just followed this one hadith, the world would be a perfect place. There would be no strife, there would be no struggle, there would be no problems with anybody anywhere if we all just simply followed this one hadith. Remember, the Prophet was giving concise speech. The problem that we have with the hadith and the sunnah is we've limited it to beards and pants. We've limited it to the exterior, not to our fa'aliyah, not to our actions, not to the way that we are with each other, not to the way that we speak with one another, not with the way that we interact with one another. So we've limited what the Prophet ﷺ was given. We've limited what he came with to an external understanding, not an internal understanding, an exoteric understanding, not an esoteric understanding. So this last hadith is very simple. It's on Abi Hazim Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, who was the khatam of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was the servant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And an Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال لا يؤمن أحدكم none of you truly believe, none of us truly believe حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب نفسه. None of us truly believe in Allah in the last day. None of us truly believe in this message of Tawheed until we love for our brothers what we love for ourselves. If we look at the rise of Muhammad ibn Yusuf ibn Nasr ibn Ahmad, who was the king who established the very last emirate of Islamic Spain, Granada. If we look at his story and who he was, we can see that Granada was really founded on the essence of this hadith. That this emirate, this last bastion of Islam in Europe, was founded on this, and this is why they found more success than everybody else. You can look at the history, you can see this. Abu traveling with Granada real fast, and you'll understand better, inshallah. So the establishment of Granada was characterized by Abu Abdullah ibn Muhammad al-Khatib. And he was known as Dhul Wazarain. He was known as the person who had a double ministry. He was really high up in the foundation of the Granada government, the Granadian government. And he functioned as Diwan al-Insha. So he was like the chancellor of the state. He was the person who ran all the official paperwork of the state. So he knew everything from the founding of Granada to when it was collapsing at its end. He actually ended up going to Algeria, where he lived in exile after Granada had been destroyed in 1491, 1492. So he said, when he looked at this, he demonstrates it wonderfully in his book. He says, when he quotes Abu Muhammad al-Basri, he said, with my own eyes I saw him when he entered the city of Granada. He was wearing on his hat a shashiyah, this woolen cap, and he had wrapped around himself a woolen cloth that was torn at the shoulders. When I read that reminded me of Omar radiallahu anhu, and how he went to Al-Quds, how he traveled to Al-Aqsa, and he went there with a donkey, a servant, and himself, in a thobe that had 17 patches in it, in a thobe that was worn, and it was torn, and it was beat down. And he loved for his brother what he loved for himself, and he loved for creation what he loved for himself. And this is why him and the servant took turns riding the donkey, and sometimes the donkey was left by itself. Because he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was the leader of all of the faithful, yet he realized that he didn't want that man to walk all that way. He didn't want to walk all that way, and he realized the donkey couldn't carry them all that way. So he wanted for his brother what he wanted for himself. So they shared the ride. And I point this out also because leadership is not about fancy clothes. Leadership is not about what we've reduced it to in the modern Western context, about who has the best suits and who has the nicest cars. That's not leadership, that's materialism. It has nothing to do with the essence of Islamic leadership. Just the sidebar. So when he established himself in Granada, when he became the king of Granada, he turned over all of the affairs of Granada, all of the military affairs, all of the day-to-day running operations, everything that had to do with the people who were living in that Islamic Iran. He turned it all over to a man by the name of Abu Hassan Ali ibn Ashkila, who was his brother-in-law. They use the word in Spanish, they say they were compadres, which means that there was a bond between them that could never be broken. That's how close they were. It was more than just a familiar bond. It was something so strong that the two of these could not ever be torn apart. So when he when he was crowned the king of Granada, when he rolled into Granada and he was given the kingdom of it, he said, he turned to his brother-in-law and he said, I am an illiterate man. I'm Ummi. I can't read, I can't write. This power, what is power for you is power for me. What is kingdom for you is kingdom for me. This is لا يؤمن أحدكم. This is none who truly believe حتى يحب لأخيه ويحب نفسه. This is that in action. Who takes a city? Who is crowned the king of a city, of a major piece of land within the Islamic Emirate? And then he looks to his brother-in-law and says, it's yours. It's yours to run. This is yours. What kingdom for me is kingdom for you. What power for me is power for you. There's no difference between the two of us. We can't even do that to organize a basketball tournament. Right? We can't even give up enough power to see who's going to put what in what and do what in what. It has to be a fight over everything. I'm not talking masjid politics. I'm talking Muslim politics, Shani. Around the world, Muslim politics. This is the way we seem to work. Just ask Palestinians how they're treated when they land at Cairo International Airport. Is that brotherhood? Is that unity there? Or is that you get taken off to a room like you do in Occupy Philistine and get talked to by security for 8 to 10 hours? They say when the establishment of Granada was based on this hadith, that the establishment of King Muhammad Ali was looked at by the Muslims and the Jews in Spain. So both the Muslims and the Jews looked at him in a very special way. They looked at him as an ayatollah. They looked at him in the establishment of the Kingdom of Granada as a sign from the signs of God, because that was established on this. These were aristocratic people who took over Granada. These were farmers. This dawah was to the people who worked in the fields. It wasn't to the aristocrats who knew how to read books. It's a very familiar sounding story, right? Prophet ﷺ didn't go to aristocratic people. He dealt with people who were falah, people who were farmers. The true Islamic community is built upon love and compassion. It's built upon love and compassion for all of its members. White, black, Arab, Ajam, it doesn't matter. It's built on love and compassion. Every member of the Muslim Ummah should love, care for, and help every other member of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We should treat each other not in the way that we wish to be treated, but in the way that that person wishes to be treated. We should treat everybody with kindness, with generosity. We should treat everybody with love. We should treat everybody as if they're wali-Allah. We should treat everybody as if they have a special status with God. This is the idea of having brotherhood in Islam. This is the idea of loving for your brother what you love for yourself. It is a community with no barriers among races, colors, madhab, or group, or ranks, and implementing this Islamic concept of brotherhood and love. And I know I talk about brotherhood a lot, but it's essential that we come together as one ummah. Not Arab and Ajam, not Pakistani and Indian, not Iraqi and Kuwaiti, not Berber and Arab, but one ummah. All these barriers must be removed from our hearts. All of these things that keep us from loving one another for the sake of Allah, they need to be removed from our hearts, so that this concept of loving each other for the sake of Allah really takes root in us. That this idea of loving for our brothers what we love for ourselves really takes root in us. Qadi Iyad, he said that this should be something that actually makes you want your brother to be better than you in everything you do. If your brother is reading Quran, his Quranic recitation should get precedence to yours. If your brother is leading Salah, his Salah should be given precedence to yours. If your brother is speaking, his speech should be given precedence to yours. Because that's what you would want for you. How many of us in this room like to be cut off when we're speaking? None of us. It's rude. When our kids do it, when we're having conversations, we say, Baba's talking. None of us like that. So why do we do that? Other barriers that must be removed from our hearts include jealousy, selfishness, and envy. Loving goodness in others is part of loving them. Seeing good attributes and characters of people and not wanting them to be removed from them is part of loving them. It's part of wanting them to be what you have. Part of good treatment of others is excusing them and giving them a fair chance. We know the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. When we meet people, we should give them a chance. When we see somebody who comes into the masjid and they're not doing the things that we know that they should be doing or we think they should be doing, based on what we think we know, we should give them the benefit of the doubt. We should give them a chance. Wallahi, we just had a brother try to kill himself in this community, in the Greater Cincinnati community, because brothers were telling him he wasn't Muslim enough. He wasn't committed enough. He wasn't strong enough. But they didn't take into account anything about this human being, his mental status, what was going on in his life, who he was. All they knew was that he prayed differently than them. And he prayed according to one of the four methods, so they should have left him alone. Because completion of one's faith is to leave doesn't concern you. That's not loving for our brother what we love for ourselves. None of us want to be dealt with in a harsh way. There's times when I come up here and I want to say stuff meanly, and I want to like yell and scream, but then I realize that doesn't do anything. No one likes that. No one likes that. There are many possibilities or ways to excuse each other from committing mistakes. And this allows us to live with each other peacefully and magnanimously and to love one another. To truly love one another. But we can't love one another if we don't know one another. If we don't know each other's names and families and how many children people have and what they do for a living and their condition of their physical conditions of living, we can't love them. There's no way. Islamic salvation is built on knowledge. Knowledge of God. Know that there is nothing where they worship God. That is the salvation that we have, is through knowledge. But it's also the way we deal with each other, is through knowledge of each other. Does that make sense? You guys follow me on that? Include a couple other stuff. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. When we deal with each other in the Muslim community, we should deal with each other in the best manners, the best level, the best way of treating each other, the best way of being with each other. We should choose the best words to use in our conversation. I used to have a sheikh who it would take him, it seemed like years to have a conversation with him, because he would say, I mean, the best way, he would pick every word that he said to make sure what he said was exactly what he wanted to convey. We don't do that. Well, I don't do that anyway. I get caught up in what I'm saying and ask me 5 minutes from now what I just said, and I'll say, I don't know what I say. Right? Because we get caught up in what we're doing. But Allah says, He says, oh, you who believe, keep your duty to Allah and fear Him, and speak always the right word. There's a saying that before you speak a word, it should pass through 3 gates. Is it relevant? Is it going to help the situation? And is it kind? And if it doesn't go through those 3 gates, if something stops it, then stop that word. Don't let it go forward. Once a word leaves our mouths, we can never take it back. It will never come back to us. Once we say something bad about our brother or sister, we can't take it back. Now we have to go through this whole embarrassing thing of apologizing and saying, oh, some other brothers, and we were talking about you, and none of us want to do that. But if we don't do that on Yom Qiyamah, will we find out salvation from that? Or will we be held accountable for that in that moment? The rights of the people, the nas, is that you have to go to them and ask them to forgive you too. And Allah Azza wa Jalla also says, وَقُلِ عِبَادِي يَأْخُذُوا الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Tell my servants to say that which is best. Tell my servants to say that which is best. That's part of loving for your brother what you love for yourself. And when we deal with our children, the smallest and most weak, the weakest of us, we should always make sure that we're picking words that are compassionate, words that build up their confidence and not tear them down, words that are words of love and not words that are injurious, right? That are malice. So we don't tell our kids, hey, that's stupid. Because what did they hear? Can we move forward, inshallah? They heard, you're stupid. That's what kids hear. And it takes 20 times of telling them that they're smart for that one time that you said the word stupid for it to leave them. So when we deal with our children, we need to deal with them in that sphere of love. When they make a mistake, say, okay, yeah, you made a mistake. What did you learn from it? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we learn from this? If we watch how the Prophet ﷺ was with children, he never demeaned them. He never called them names. He always loved for them what he loved for himself, which was mercy and compassion. And he always taught them the right way to be. Always. So we need to work on that. I need to work on that. Me especially. We need to learn how to humble ourselves to each other. To get rid of arrogance and ego. And to truly speak to each other in human moments, to have real relationships, real conversations with one another, be treated as a human being. But unfortunately, sometimes our religion seems like it's been hijacked by people that are angry and they just want to shout mad rhetoric at people. And it causes us to go outside into the world that we live in to treat other people as if they're the other because they're treating us as we're the other. Yesterday I was walking home from the MSA, and I do a Thursday night class every Thursday at the MSA, and there was a football game yesterday at University of Cincinnati. I have no idea if they won or they lost, I have no clue. But as I was walking through the sea of football fans, most of I always thought college campuses were these, bastions of liberal ideas where, everybody could be themselves, so people were cool with that until I walked through a crowd at a football game. And then I realized kind of that everyone was looking at me as if I was wrong, like I shouldn't be there. So I just continued to smile because I'm an idiot. So I just continued to smile and walk through the crowd smiling at people and saying, hey, how you doing? And people would look at me funny and I'd be like, everything is all right. How's the game going? You guys gonna win? Have these kind of, single-serving friendships with people as I'm walking out of the campus to go home. And then I got to University and, I don't know the name of the street there. It's before Short Line, whatever that street is. Vine, it's Vine. So I got to University in Vine, and this elderly white woman comes running up to me, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be, what is this going to be? Is she going to scream at me? Is she going to throw her drink in my face? What's going to go on? And she ran up to me and she said, I just want to tell you that I love you. That I love Muslims. And as long as I'm here, you can be here. Right? That was a beautiful moment I shared with this random stranger. That's the kind of things that we need to look at. So there might be people like the Tangerine Man who are out there stoking the fires of hate. And there might be people who dislike us, who try to burn down the masajid, and who do horrible things to people. But there's always that one old white lady that will run to you and tell you that she loves you because you're Muslim. Right? There's always that man in the grocery store who'll come to you and say, you have as much right to be here as me. So we have to get past this idea of only dealing with people with hate, only dealing with people with anger. And we have to start dealing with everybody we meet with the idea of we don't believe until we love for them what we love for ourselves. This is how the Prophet ﷺ changed Medina. This is why when Jewish people would throw trash at his doorstep when they were sick, he would go and see them. Not because he was angry that they were throwing trash at his doorstep, but because he would want to be seen when he was sick. That's the reality of this religion. That's the reality of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not this idea that we've made it into, where it's cold and it's callous and it has no feelings. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to love people, to be rahmatan lil alameen, to be a mercy to all of the creatures, all of the worlds. That's the Sunnah. In the last 4 minutes, I want to talk about that we have a great opportunity here to support each other in this community. We have a unified Eid carnival. For the first time that I know, well, I've been here 2 years, I don't know a lot, but for the first time that I know, there's a unified Eid anything in the city of Cincinnati, where Clifton, Mason, and Westchester have come together to put together a carnival for our children, to put together something that we all can go to as one Muslim community goes to. This is our opportunity to stand up and be one ummah. Yeah, it's in Mason, it's far, it's a 40-minute drive from my house, but it's an opportunity for us to be one. Not to be 3, not to be 4, not to be 5. This is our opportunity to come together, to volunteer, to help one another. Amr and Amr, that will stand there, are sitting there. They're standing in office. But they'll be signing up volunteers for people that want to help with this. Also, this weekend, we have CARES barbecue on Sunday. CARE is an organization that fundamentally helps us. We should support them. Whether we agree with them or not, we should support them. I agree with them. I'm a big fan of CARE. I'm just saying we should support them in their efforts to help us. The Democratic Party's out there signing up people to vote. We should support them because they're here to help us. We need to stop seeing ourselves as insular, away from everybody else, because we're not. We're not away from everybody else. Where do we live? In Ohio or in Mason or wherever we live. We live here. So we can't be insular anymore. I guess I just got a thing that there are some people from another faith outside the protest signs. That's what that phone thing was about. When you go outside, meet them with love. Don't meet them with hate. Don't let their hate or their misconceptions or their misunderstandings of us be fortified by the way we treat them. Let's meet them with smiles. Let's meet them with handshakes. Let's meet them with love. Because love is an absolutely good thing, and hate is an absolutely evil thing, and love will always conquer hate. So when we leave, just remember there are 600 of us loving, caring Muslims who want to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet as compared to whatever number of people who want to spread hate and division. And then my last thing, I really want to make this point. In Spanish history, not in Islamic Spanish history, but in Spanish history, 1492 is remembered, and they call them 3 great points. I don't call them that, that's what Spanish history calls them, 3 great points. And they're in chronological order. The first one is the Christian conquest of the final Islamic city-state in Europe, Granada. We started this khutbah off with the founding of Granada, we're ending it with the fall of Granada. And Granada fell because we became disunited. Granada fell because the Muslims started fighting among ourselves for power and authority in the land. Granada fell because we stopped loving for our brothers what we love for ourselves. When the empire was falling, the king of Granada, he sent a message to the people of the Maghreb. He said, help, they're coming to get us. And the people of the Maghreb said, you've been on your own this long, continue to be on your own. That's not loving for your brother what you love for yourself. The next thing they had was the Christian expulsion of Jews from Spain. So with the final fall of Granada, all of the Jews who were living in Granada under the protection of Islam were kicked out. In Jewish history, wallahi, every time the Jews have been persecuted, they've always ran to us and found safety. Aren't things ironic nowadays? And the third one was that Christopher Columbus, they don't say it this way, this is the way I'm going to say it. Christopher Columbus began to rape and murder indigenous people in America. Those are the 3 great things that happened in Spanish history. If we don't come together, if we don't start loving each other the way we should love each other, if we don't start thinking about each other the way we should start thinking about each other, they will say in 2020, the greatest things that happened in America were the expulsion of Muslims from our country. This is a reality. Maybe not 2020, but it's a reality. We need to come together, stop fighting, stop bickering with each other about things that don't really matter. If my finger is straight, if my finger is moving, if my hands are here, here, or here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Those are all fiqh issues, and there's khilaf, there's differences of opinion on where you place your hands, and there's no sahih hadith that talks about the placement of hands. We can go through these if anyone wants to go through these. We can go all through all 23 hadith, and we can go through and prove that none of them are sahih. So it's not worth the fight. There was an Islamic scholar who said we argue about where we place our hands while the enemies of Islam are trying to cut them off. We argue with whether we move our fingers, ya akhwani, and we might not have the right to vote anymore. We worry about where our hands are in salah or where our feet are in prayer, but we don't realize that we're losing any kind of rights we have in this country because we're disunified. We're not together anymore. So I start with me first, and then I'm going to quit. The way I'm going to quit. I start with me first by saying I love everyone in this room for the sake of Allah. If I've harmed anyone in this room with anything I've ever done, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And let's start moving forward as Muslims in Cincinnati to make Cincinnati a better place. And then once Cincinnati is fixed, then let's start moving forward to other cities and fixing other cities. Let's start here where we're at and stop worrying about where we came from or where we might be going. And let's start fixing things here where we're at. اللهم انت نور السماوات والارض ومن فيهن ولك الحمد. وانت قيم السماوات والارض ومن فيهن ولك الحمد. وانت رب السماوات والارض ومن فيهن. اللهم انصرنا فانك خير الناصرين، واغفر لنا فانك خير الغافرين، وارحمنا فانك خير الراحمين، وارزقنا فانك خير الرازقين. لا اله الا انت سبحانك ان كنا من الظالمين. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم تسليما بفضل يديما بل في كل وقت وحين. حمد واخر دعوانا الحمد لله